Hi, this is The Greatest Story Ever Played. I'm Dan, and today I am going to be talking about Resistance, Fall of Man. So, a description for this game is, Resistance, Fall of Man delivers a thoroughly believable experience that blends epic military action and unnerving tension. In Resistance, Fall of Man, hiding isn't an option because weapons blast around and through obstacles as creatures swarm from all directions. So, a little background on the game. This was developed by Insomniac Games, who we know for Marvel's Spider-Man, the 2018 Spider-Man on PS4, for the Spyro series, the Ratchet & Clank series, and of course the Resistance series. There's 2 more games after Resistance, Fall of Man. So, I guess hopping into the recap, what we get is the game has a consistent narrator through the chapters, and our narrator is Captain Rachel Parker. She works in the British Intelligence Agency, and this is what she says to open the game. It says, on July 11th, 1951, the Americans launched an assault on the eastern coast of England. On the second wave of that assault was a sergeant named Nathan Hale. The actions of the Ranger have become a matter of both scrutiny and myth. What follows of the known events from his life from July 11th to July 14th, the day he was last seen. So you get that, and then in the game, you actually play as Nathan Hale, and it's through this assault through England. And what we find out, too, in this is that there are these alien creatures, really, I guess, called the Chimera. And the Chimera first showed up in Russia in the early 1900s, and Russia's walls were closed, essentially, at that point. But what had been happening was that the Chimera were taking over Russia. They then launched an attack on Europe. Europe fell very quickly. After that, I think it said in 3 months, Europe was just taken over by the Chimera. They were just swarmed. And then they were stopped by the English Channel, so they couldn't invade the UK, the Chimera, for a while. But then they burrowed under the Channel and came up the other side on England, and so then they attacked England pretty severely. And so the United States then chose to come and help their allies, England, and that's where Nathan Hale is introduced, and kind of how we get where the the game starts. So, the game begins in York, and also through the game, you kind of travel around England fighting the Chimera, and different things happen. So, we're kind of going to follow it as it is and pull out the big story beats. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the plan. So, York is where the game begins. Nathan Hale and his company get there, and you battle through the Chimera with fellow soldiers. This is the first time you encounter them, of course. And the Chimera are kind of humanoid-looking aliens, except they've got blaster rifles and stuff like that. So it would be kind of like World War II era soldiers that you are fighting. Maybe like aliens from Star Wars, almost. It's kind of crazy. They're they're certainly better equipped and maybe better fighters, but definitely is its own thing. You fight for a while through York. Then Hale and his squad end up in this dry creek bed and are following the Chimera that way. And they get swarmed by these bugs, and they all pass out. They're almost like little scorpion-looking things. They're really tiny, but a whole bunch of them come from the Chimera. They spread out, and it makes all the soldiers pass out. It looks a little gross even as the bugs are crawling on them, and one goes in a soldier's mouth. It's nasty. And when this happens, everyone is comatose, but Hale ends up waking up a little later, and he goes and joins other soldiers. He's like, okay, I'm going to keep fighting. I don't know what happened or why they're comatose and I'm not, but he just goes to keep fighting. A little while later, after fighting more bugs end up arriving, and you are knocked out again. You then wake up in Grimsby, which is a nearby town, and you wake up and you're a prisoner inside of this conversion chamber. So what the Chimera do also is they convert humans into Chimera, which is pretty crazy. That you get. So one way that can happen that is kind of your standard is if you get turned into a chimera as you, and then you just end up a chimeran foot soldier, like we saw, like I mentioned at the beginning. That's one thing, but there's other chimera that exist, or other alien types, and some of them are like huge and different things you deal with, but apparently some of them are created by just fusing multiple people together and turning them into like a super alien, but just giving them the mass. So it's kind of crazy. It's a pretty wild situation. It would be very alarming waking up inside the conversion chamber too. There are these aliens that do the conversion, especially, it seems. They're maybe like the worker chimera, the worker bees, as a sense, instead of like the fighting ones. And they're like gross looking. They're just like these like emaciated looking skinny ones, but they move really slow, but when they grab you, they just bite you, kind of thing. So they're kind of creepy, but you go through and you fight them when you escape. During escaping, you end up finding Captain Parker, and you rescue her. And she notices when we rescue her that we've got golden eyes, like the Chimera do. And she's like, "Oh, you're being changed, maybe." And so she we stand out to her, and she's like, "What's an American doing here helping us? I thought you all got killed," kind of thing. But ultimately, we fight our way out of the conversion center, and a helicopter comes and saves us along with Captain Parker, and we head off. From here, we head to Manchester, because Captain Parker said that there's a big need there, that they need our help there, our soldiers. So we come, and a big thing that happens here, you fight a lot of chimera, but the biggest thing you do is you destroy a stalker. And what a stalker is basically like a giant spider thing, but it's a tank. So it would be like a tank for the chimera, like their land vehicle kind of thing that like can destroy stuff, military vehicle, except it's shaped like a spider and walks like a spider. But we destroyed one of those. And this is where you get kind of the first instance, I would say in a big way, of the legend of Nathan Hale. Which is cool that this game really is that. Resistance Fall of Man is a great title and it all works out, but it could also have been called Resistance The Legend of Nathan Hale, and it would have totally fit, because the game you really experience that kind of thing is that this random American is here, and he's super good at fighting, and he's brave, and he does all this big stuff in the war against the Chimera. So it's kind of a cool thing. But your first kind of entrance into your legend in a big way is that you destroy this stalker, this big robot spider, and the British even exclaim, like different soldiers, like, "Oh my god, he killed it by himself, like, look at this guy." Also in it, we capture a containment cell that I think allows the British intelligence to study more about the Chimera. So we captured this key piece that will help them in the war against the Chimera. After this, we go to Nottingham because we find out that there's basically passageways underground that have allowed the Chimera to sneak attack people. So we go and destroy some passages to prevent some surprise attacks. After this, we head to Cheshire, which is where the British Northern Command is. And the biggest thing here, we do kill our way through a bunch of Chimera, of course, but there's an angel, which is a special type of Chimera. I think it's kind of like a lead Chimera, in a sense, that it has maybe power over the other Chimera a little more. I think, this might be wrong, but I think that the Chimera might have sort of a hive mind, and so killing an angel would be a big deal because it's like power over the other Chimera kind of thing. But Hale kills an angel, and the angel's like really like a giant scorpion kind of thing, and when Hale shoots it, it's like crazy. But what it does too is it seemingly maybe releases some of the Chimeran power that could have been had over Hale. Like Hale, for whatever reason, was resistant to the bug thing that happened earlier. It didn't infect him from the inside like it did other people, but him killing this, it seems that his mind seems a little freer. Like he was still free before, but it seemed he kind of had like a headache and like fell down for a second after he killed the angel. So you've got that. Hale, or Captain Parker, also comments at this point that Hale is faster, like the Chimera, unnaturally quick, and that also, judging by the bullet wounds in his uniform, that he must have the self-healing property that the Chimera have too. So that's pretty cool. And I guess also, throughout all of this, so each like city you visit and different things like that, Rachel Parker will give her kind of commentary on it, like, we went here because of this thing, or we did this because of that, or what's going on. So it's kind of cool. It really does feel like you, as I mentioned, hearing the legend of Nathan Hale, that she's kind of telling you the story, and you're playing through the actions, and you kind of keep going that way, which is pretty cool. I like that. Next, we head to Somerset, and we go there because Lieutenant Cartwright tracks the Chimera to this point, and Lieutenant Cartwright is one of Captain Parker's best soldiers. So she sends Hale after him and says, hey, go find him and help him out. And Hale gets there. All of Cartwright's men have died, but Cartwright is still there, so Hale and Cartwright team up. The big thing they find out, they kill their way through a lot of Chimera, but a big discovery they make is that the Chimeran Tower was excavated as opposed to being brought there. So the Chimera had already kind of started something before, and I guess perhaps have been to the world before now, and stuff like that. So, it's a big piece of information. In Somerset, what they do is they notice these power lines that the Chimera used to travel through. And so they follow them down to Bristol to a conduit that is seemingly a hub for the Chimera. They kill their way through here and they destroy the conduit. And so they're like, okay, I think we've got it. But they discover that there are more tunnels. And so Hale decides to follow the Chimeran tunnels to see where they will go. What he discovers is that in London, there is a larger conduit, and it's got power lines going in all directions. So London is, in fact, the conduit. This is the big spot that the Chimera are coming from. We thought it was in Bristol, but it wasn't. In fact, London is the big one, so let's do it. He lets Captain Parker know and says, if we destroy this tower in London, I think we can beat the Chimera. This is the thing. And Captain Parker decides to roll the dice with Hale and say, okay, let's do it. So she contacts the Americans and says, hey, bring everyone to London, attack full heart there. She gets her British troops. Everyone's just going to attack London with everything they got because if Hale is right, this could be the key to winning the war, kind of thing. So they attack. Hale ends up going inside the Chimeran Tower and shoots his way through. What he ends up finding at the center is there's this tower with power cells that the Chimeran Tower is operating through and, sending power to all the other Chimeran plants and all that stuff. And you get into this crazy last, essentially boss battle, where you have two soldiers with you and Chimeran are like flooding out and you need to shoot the power cells. And they each have like not a force field exactly, but sort of a barrier beyond them, and it's into thirds. So you have to actually shoot the power cells 3 different times as it's going. Like, you destroy one, you can move on to the next one, but there's chaos going around you too, so you kind of have to divvy up shoot the guys around me, destroy the power cell, and kind of go back and forth. What I did at this point, I had like a bazooka, so I could shoot the power cell with the bazooka, then I'd switch to my gun, shoot Chimera for a little bit, and then move to the next section and shoot the bazooka, shoot guys for a bit, and move on. But it gets pretty chaotic, for sure. You do destroy it, though, and Captain Parker tries to wait for Hale with a helicopter outside and says, make it to me, we have to go now. But the power cell explodes, the Chimeran Tower explodes, fire just comes everywhere, and Captain Parker has to evacuate to evade the blast before Hale can get there. Credits roll, game over. But then we get a post-credit scene. And we see Hale walking through the snow and looking beat up a bit. And this small plane lands, and like 5 armed dudes with like gas masks on come and surround him. And you see Hale have a grenade in his hand, thinking about pulling the pin, and then decides, nah, I'm not going to do that. And he drops the grenade, and then he goes onto the plane with the men. Game over. So this I feel like there's a lot of, I guess, small comments to say about the game. I guess from here in my general thoughts. One thing is just on a personal level, this is one of the first games I ever beat. As a kid, I beat the Pokemon, like Red and Yellow and stuff. I beat those back in the day, but otherwise, I think mostly I'd played games as a kid, not playing ones with campaigns that I would beat or I would not get through them. But Resistance Fall of Man, I did beat the whole game. I played it co-op with my roommate in college, like freshman year of college, and it's couch co-op, so that was super fun. This game as a couch co-op was tremendously fun. I wish I had enough time that if I would have played it with someone else and done it and played the game that way, actually, because the couch co-op was super fun playing it that way. Back then, it would have been really fun to do that now. So yeah, that's one thing. So Resistance, I would say, really has a special place in my like mind or whatever because of that. It's just that experience of playing the game together with a friend that, you know, we were just having so much fun trying to battle the Chimera together. And, you know, you I think you acted as medic for each other too, so if one of us was hurt, it would be like, okay, you heal me up, and then we'd, you know, try to maneuver together and like be like, okay, I'll take left side, you take right, or, you know, whatever. So that was pretty fun, for sure, back then playing. Also, this is a really fun shooter in my book. And I think that's why the recap is a bit shorter than normal, is that a lot of this game really is a shooter. It's got a good story around it and stuff like that, but it is probably more of a shooter than as much of a story as other games I'd play or whatever we talk about on the show. But there's still, you know, a story for sure that I think is pretty cool. There's enjoyable weapons in this game, so, you know, first you start off with like a carbine or something like that as an army soldier, but then you build up an arsenal of both American or human weapons from the World War II era, and then also Chimeran weapons that are alien weapons. So you have this kind of cool mix of like, oh, you have a laser gun, but then you have a bazooka. You have a regular like hand grenade, but then you also have a Chimeran hand grenade. And the Chimera hand grenades are sweet. You like throw them, and then it like blows up spikes almost in like a big circle radius, which those are really great because you can, you know, kill several guys at once or whatever. So they're pretty cool. You end up with like a shotgun. Your carbine can have like a little grenade launcher thing, which is cool. Like, so there's a fair amount of cool weapons in this, and you can kind of find ones that are good with each other, and certain weapons are better for certain aliens. So I mentioned only a couple, but there's a lot of different aliens that come. There's like, I would say scorpions that are maybe like half the size of a person, and those will swarm you where a bunch of them will run at you. And I found that the shotgun is really good for shooting them because it sprays, so you might get one or two of them, and since they're smaller, they're easier to kill. But then you've got you know, your regular foot soldiers, you've got the emaciated, most humanoid-ish looking aliens who are the workers. Those ones, you can have these this gun that's almost like shooting landmines that are these bubbles at the aliens. I found that those were really good for killing the walking ones like that, because it, you know, they just walk into them and it explodes on them kind of thing. So there's that. There's one alien that is probably like, I don't know, 16 feet tall or something like that. Like, it's huge. It's like 2 or 3 people stacked on each other, like 2 or 3 people wide. Like, it's huge, and it's got this like grenade launcher, fireball shooting thing. Like, so there's a bit of different aliens too, and kind of judging like, this one's good. There's one that's like a jellyfish. So there's kind of a variety of chimera that you can kill, and certain weapons work better with certain ones, which is cool. In terms of the environment of the game, I really, really like the alternate history plus aliens combination we've got. I think that's super cool. I think World War II games are, plenty cool. That's a cool era of history, or interesting era of history, or whatever. And, taking that and then throwing, there's this alternate history instead where aliens come and attack us. Like, I thought that was pretty cool idea. It's pretty intriguing to me as a concept. Like, if there was a Resistance book, or if there is, I would be interested in reading it, or like, I want to play the future games. I think the world itself is pretty interesting, is cool. I also think the combo of like having World War I era weapons fighting against people with laser rifles, that's pretty crazy too. Like, you've got just differing technologies majorly like intersecting on each other like that. So I don't know, it's kind of a cool idea. So yeah, I think that's most of my general thoughts on the game, but I think it's cool. I think this I think it's pretty cool, and I enjoyed it. I think the actual playtime for it isn't too bad. Like, you might be able to beat it in 6 or 7 hours, which is nice. It's not as long as you'd think or whatever, so that's kind of cool too. I do have a little bit of listener feedback though. So Chris on Twitter said that it was a pretty underrated PS3 launch game, and yeah, I agree. You don't really hear a lot about Resistance now. I mean, it's been a long time, but I think a pretty solid game. And I do remember it being a PS3 launch game. That's how I was able to play it, is one of the roommate who had it, who I played with, they got a PS3 at launch. And so I don't know if this game came with it or not, but this was one of the first games they had. And so that's how I played it. And I have a lot of fond memories from that. And I imagine a lot of other people who got it at launch do too. And then Thomas on Twitter said, I don't play many first-person shooters, but last year I tried the 6 oldest Halo games, then this, Resistance. But last year I tried the 6 oldest games. This year I'm going to give Far Cry a try, and next year I'm hoping to do Resistance and or Killzone. Thus far, linear sci-fi shooters certainly to be my cup of tea, more my cup of tea than modern, big sandbox ones. Yeah, there is something that is pretty cool about the sci-fi shooter kind of thing, and I think that's probably what makes me like this, and same for BioShock too. On there, BioShock is a shooter, but it's got a lot going on that's cool, and same thing for Resistance. I definitely enjoyed playing Halo back in the day. I never owned an Xbox, so my Halo was limited, but I liked playing. And I've heard the Killzone games are cool as well. I know that they're made by Guerrilla Games, who made Horizon Zero Dawn, so that has my interest much higher, because I do like Guerrilla Games because of that. So, but yeah, I think same thing. I'm not as much into like sandbox shooters. I don't even have PlayStation Online, but like I'm not as into that. But I do like kind of a campaign to do that's a shooter. Like, I think those are pretty fun, and you can come up with a good solid story like this, and it's a pretty enjoyable shooter and stuff like that. So yeah. And then TLPBC on Twitter said, I enjoyed it, but I had a tough time getting through a lot of the game. It's important to note that first-person shooters aren't my strong suit. And I feel that. I definitely played this chunked up. Like, I played maybe an hour or two, like a couple months ago, and then I picked it up and played maybe an hour more, and I chunked it up that way. But part of what did slow me down in some of that is I did get stuck at a couple points, because the same thing with them. I'm not the best at first-person shooters. I can get used to them, but like, once I get used to them, I can do all right, but there were different points at the game where I was like, oh, I'm not used to this, and I'm not sure how to, like, kill this swarm of enemies. I'm not doing it right, or whatever, and so I did find a couple parts difficult to get through. There was one part I was stuck on for a little while because it was like one room you walk into and there was, 8 enemies, but they were all like spread out, and they also had one of the laser guns can shoot through walls, so you couldn't just hide. They would still be able to shoot you. So that kind of got me stuck, and I wasn't able to do more. But then I kind of figured, okay, I'm going to like throw a grenade left, and then I'm going to run right and start shooting there, or, whatever I did. But, yeah. So I do feel that for sure. I guess also actually closing, I didn't write this down, but it's true, is I really hope that they bring Resistance back for PS5. Now that Insomniac's owned by PlayStation, I do, even if they don't come back, but I'm glad PlayStation owns Insomniac because Insomniac makes good games, and more PlayStation exclusives or whatever, or even if they start as exclusives and, go broader, that's fine too, whatever. But PlayStation does seem to have a pulse on the kind of games I like playing. And so, I don't know, Insomniac being part of that's good. But I do really hope we could get another Resistance. I would be really into a Resistance 4, or even if you just started with whatever happens in Resistance 1, but a different angle. You play as another character somewhere else, doing other things, or that kind of thing. I would be totally into that. I don't know what Resistance 2 and Resistance 3 have in them. I didn't play them back then, and I don't know what they bring. I do want to play them eventually, though. I would like to see what they have to offer. I've heard that 2 isn't as good, and then 3 kind of is the best of the bunch, is what some people say. So if I'd be into that, and I'd be willing to go through 2 if it's not as good, to get to 3 if it's better than this one, because I like this game. This is a quality game, and I'm glad I got to replay it and stuff. But yeah, Resistance 4, that would be sweet if Insomniac wants to do that, or if they even just remaster these. I did sense some of, like, I played on my PS3, but I think PS3 came out in, like, 2006, maybe. And so being a game that's, 14 years old or whatever, 13 years old, whatever. But, being old like that, you do sense some of that. Like, some of the controls or how some of the animation looks. It's not great. I mean, it's not bad either. Like, it didn't hinder it. But I also had an expectation of what it would look like since I'd played it before back then. But to see an updated version of this, that would be pretty cool too. I would be into that. Or I guess also I'd be into Insomniac writing their own IP. Like Resistance, I think they just made this up and it is pretty cool. So I don't know. I don't know what they'll bring, but I'm interested in it. So yeah, that is the episode though. If you would like to write into us, you can do that on Twitter at StoryEverPod. I like interacting there plenty. Or you can send us an email at TheGreatestStoryEverPlayed@gmail.com. If you want to check out our website, you can at TheGreatestStoryEverPlayed.com. On our website, we've got all our episodes are on there, and some bonus content and stuff like that. You can check that out. If you'd like to support the podcast financially, we'd super appreciate that, and you could do that on patreon.com/TheGreatestStoryEverPlayed. If you decide to do that, you can give as low as $1 per month, and we have an exclusive Patreon episode that comes out each month that's topical in nature, so talking about things like our favorite gaming systems or video games that we would like adapted into something else. So that's kind of what we talk about there. But yeah, if you'd like to support in that way, we'd really appreciate that. And lastly, if you would just like to support us by rating and reviewing us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, we'd super appreciate that. That really helps increase visibility for the show, and that we can enjoy the story games we all like together even more and share that with others. Because I think there's a lot of people who like these kind of games that you and I both like. So if you do that, we'd super appreciate that as well. And thank you for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.